everyone, Maurice and welcome to Tanks Invest, where we talk about investing, finance, and professional development. For today's video, editing purposes only. First, I just want to say Happy Memorial Day to all the US folks that are watching here, and thank you for joining us today. And also hope everybody had a great weekend so far. With respect to our video today, it's going to be slightly different in comparisons to our typical technical analysis video, looking at the trends of that day on both a macroeconomical perspective and also the human psychological perspective. I've been getting a lot of questions lately with respect to the price target that I've identified for the respective cryptocurrencies for both Bitcoin and Ethereum. So I'm gonna go through the methodologies and the logics of how am I getting there, and the psychological levels that we should be looking out for in the near future if we are thinking ahead of time, right? If you're a long-term investor. So stay tuned, stick around, let's make some money. All right, so moving on to the price target methodology calculation part of this video, and I'm going to go over Ethereum first, and I'll do Bitcoin a separate video. And with respect to what this calculation does, it really tells you is the price projection in a 12-month horizon, right, contingent on the corporate adoptions and global utilizations for Ethereum as a whole, okay? And with respect to corporate adoption percentage, I am representing global corporations or companies globally that maintains a balance sheet of at least 500 million upward, right? It could be 500 million to 500 billion, depending on the market cap size of the company, right? You could talk about from the smallest scale to, like like a Lyft, which has a much smaller market cap in comparisons to like a Amazon or like a Google, right? In those spectrum, right? And this calculation does not include like the smaller enterprise companies, which most of the time, as we know, they tend to stay away from the cryptocurrencies asset allocations because they don't have a lot of cash in comparisons to like an Amazon or Google, right? So we get rid of those in the calculation just for the sake of like in a cleaner perspective, and also it just doesn't make sense quite logically if we put that into the methodology as we calculate that adjustments. And also, we are not including the public investors like you and I as well, right? So this is majorly the drivers of this model is really driven by corporate investors allocations, okay? Corporate adoptions only. So with respect to the price point that I've talked to you about on the entry price level that you see here, so currently, based on my research and the quantitative analysis that I've done, I don't want to go through all of that quantitative analysis because it's a pretty comprehensive model. That currently we are holding about like 5% globally of Ethereum at the moment on a corporate adoption level, right? And if we were to expand this going forward in Horizon, right, and if we were get to the $95,000 level that that I talked about in my previous video and the subsequent videos that I've done so far on my price target of a $9,500 level, this will subsequently in logic perspective means that corporations, 20% of global corporations that have at least 500 million of balance sheets will need to incur at least 1% of the Ethereum into the balance sheet, right? And for us to do that, then we will get to the $98,000 level, right? And currently we are at the 5% adoption rate at the 2450 level. And if we are able to get to the 10%, we'll get down to the $5,000 level, which would subsequently give you like 2 times, right? And some people have been asking like, what would it take for us to get to like the $25,000 level, right? You basically need to expect close to half of the corporations globally to incur at least 1% of Ethereum into the balance sheet. And subsequent to that, you'll get to about 10x of your return from there. But in terms of like a 12 months horizon, do you think it's logical to think that half of the companies in the world are gonna just buy up Ethereum just like that and incur at least 1% into the balance sheets? Half of the corporations, right? I think that's a relatively, in a logical supply and demand dynamic perspective, that's a relatively stretch, right? Because it's taking us, a fair amount of time for us to gain some tractions, and obviously populations, for the public media perspective. But in terms of a corporate perspective, it goes through a lot of like legislative and regulatory hurdles before you get through it, right? Because ultimately you need to get through like SEC compliance, you need to go through all the legality type of adjustments, and also you have to be, provide the fiduciary duty to your investors as a corporation to ensure that this risk or this volatility of cryptocurrencies is well mitigated going forward, right? For us to get to this 50% of corporate adoption of the $24,500 level to generate a 10x of your money in in a 12 months horizon, I think that's a bit of a stretch. But I think, with respect to my assumption of 20%, about like $9,500 in 12 months horizons, knowing the fact that we kind of did test about like the $4,000 level right now. So we did type of test like 10% so far, about like the $4,900, about like 2x your money so far, which we all did, right? I know I personally did. That's logical, but with respect to like getting to this level or getting down to like the 20x level of 100% of your corporate adoption for us to get to 50K, I think that's gonna happen eventually. Because ultimately, in the global perspective, I think currency, the paper money that we exchange, is gonna be an obsolete thing going forward. I think over time, as we see more adoptions with respect to like digital payment solutions with Alipay, Google Pay, and all those type of stuff, money is becoming more of digitized type of a wallet solution. And Ethereum, Bitcoin are basically at the emergence of it, right? And they are in the perfect position to further get adopted from there. But you talk about something that is so seismic and is something that is more of a global revolution right now. Does it make sense for a global revolution to take place in just a 12 months horizon? No, right? Like again, right? Rome wasn't built in a day. Rome wasn't built in a year. Rome was built among like decades, right? Countries are built amongst decades or even centuries, right? And you talk about a global evolution, basically antiquating the old financial system into a newly centralized financial system, decentralized financial system in a global perspective with like hundreds and thousands of countries around the world to shift that from one side to another. Think about that in your head, like psychologically, right? Logically, in terms of supply and demand dynamics. Does that make any sense to you? I think it's gonna take some time, to be honest with you. I think for us to get to the $25,000 level in 12 months, that's a huge stretch. But I think 20%, that could be fair, right? And again, I'm being conservative, right? Because we have seen the 10%er of corporate adoption, and I'm excluding, right, in my calculations, the public investors and the lower enterprise companies, the smaller companies, the mom and pops, right? Right. I'm excluding the big mega whales that are just like one-time investors, right? I'm excluding some of those like one-off billionaires that decide to dump maybe 250 million into Bitcoin. Those type of folks, right? I'm only including global corporate companies, right? So think about that in perspective, right? So I think, for us to get to like the year mark, the 12 months, $95,000 as fair. I think it's highly unlikely for us to get to the $24,500 level. I give that maybe a 1% probability of 5%. I'll give that a benefit of the doubts, right? Because we want to include public investors and lower enterprise companies as well. For us to get to like the 50K or 100% corporate adoption, I give that like a 0.001% chance of us getting there. So hopefully you guys can like screenshot this page that you have in front of you, right? And really think about, right? Doesn't make sense for you to load your money at this moment right now, right? Doesn't make sense for you to be thinking about like the price fluctuations of like going up 200%, going up $1,000 in a day, or like those type of fluctuation, or down $1,000 in a day. does it make sense to think in that perspective right now? Or does it make more sense to think more of a macro adoption perspective going forward? How likely are we going to get to these levels down here, right? Right? And if you're able to think about that roadmap, logically, you know, and have good cash balance on the side for you to maneuver through these cycles going forward, and sustain your emotions, sustain your mentality to the point that eventually you're gonna ride out these waves, and the cryptocurrencies waves are pretty high tides, right? That eventually getting to the $49,000 of 100% of global adoption on just the corporate side, right? For you to generate a 20x your money from here, that's possible. But good things takes time, right? And patience will pay off if you are frugal and if you're disciplined and you are, again, right, dead inside, thinking analytically, just using human psychology, using financial analysis, using supply and demand dynamics in your equations, and understanding the macro economical adoption levels. If you can triangulate all of these factors that we talked about, then buying at these levels would be, a relatively logical thing to do then, right? All right, so hopefully you guys enjoyed my price target methodology video on how I'm arriving at these numbers, right? Hopefully it paints you more of a clarity and more transparencies into the projections that Wall Streets are making or people are making. There's a path to these numbers, right? They're not just like throwing numbers up in the air for the sake of throwing numbers up in the air and hope it sticks, right? There's always a path, a process for us to get there, and hopefully screenshotting this page as a 12 months price target for you, it gives you that a sense of mind on what's that end goal is going to look like, what's the end picture, or the return subsequently that you will get from here, right? And appreciate you guys for dropping by, and please hit the like button, the subscribe button, also that bell notification, and please watch out for the next video. Take care. Bye.